sure you're ready for this?
I'll do my best.
Your best? Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and the prom queen.
Welcome to the best soccer show. The best soccer show in the whole world.
Here we go. Best soccer show, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Jason Davis, Jared DuBois, live Wednesday night edition of El Show. Mr. DuBois.
Trying to make a lot out of nothing tonight.
Yes, we are. We have an obligation. We show up. You know, when you set, this is just one of those things that my dad always taught me. If you make an appointment, you show up, whether you need to go through the exercise or not. And we're here for the people. We're here to entertain. It's not just about.
You know what my dad taught me?
What do you teach you?
These are legit. I'm going to censor one word out of this. These are legit his words. He told me one day when I was in community college, about to go to San Diego State. Don't go to college with a girlfriend because there's so much blank running around there.
Jay Rodius.
Says dad.
He was so right. I went with a girlfriend and I lived to regret it.
I made that same mistake myself.
A clingy girlfriend.
These things you learn. You are so sure of your wisdom when you're 18 years old. You're older than that, weren't you? You were probably,
I was like 20 at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you went to community college first, then you were definitely older. So we are here. There is not a ton of stuff to talk about. There are some happenings in terms of American players that we'll touch on. We didn't really get a chance to talk about Aron Jóhannsson. I don't know if that had happened yet on Sunday night. Aron Jóhannsson with his 20th goal of the season. Jozy Altidore played today in the League Cup semifinal for Sunderland.
How many goals of the season on Jozy?
He has two goals.
One goal. I think it's one goal. Well, if you count league, I think competition he has one. So I think that's where he gets two.
It's not a good return for Jozy Altidore at Sunderland. What does that mean? I think, look, this has been a running topic for a lot of for a lot of people over the last couple of months, especially since Jozy has been struggling. It has Aron Jóhannsson overtaken Jozy Altidore. I think we've had this discussion, and my thing was they aren't the same player, so it's not really. It's not really an easy swap necessarily.
But also, the big part of that hinges on how much do you rate form versus what you know about a player in a system.
Right.
Just because Jozy's on a crappy team, not playing that well, does that mean that he can't still be the star of the U.S. national team? It just gets harder and harder to have that investment and have that assured opinion when there's nothing to back it up. When you have this young, hot girl just strolling down the street with her 20 goals saying, like, you need to come over here. The grass is greener.
The best soccer show, the only place where you will hear, and haven't done this in forever, where you will hear Aron Jóhannsson described as a hot 20-year-old blonde girl or whatever you just
20-goal female.
So our phone lines are open, by the way, if you have anything of interest to yourself or others that you might want to share. 201-430-2378 is the phone number. We'll take all comers tonight.
I also want to extend a question. Does the best soccer show listener think that Aron Jóhannsson can beat Jozy's record? Was it 33 goals last year?
Yeah, good question. Can Aron Jóhannsson, playing in the same league for the same team, overtake Jozy Altidore for the record for Americans scoring in Europe, which is
he's on pace?
I guess. No, I know. I'm about to make a comment about the record as we view it. It's not really a record. I mean, it's so specific. An American in Europe. To me, it speaks to our inferiority complex more than anything else, right? That we care who the number one.
Everybody cares about goals.
Sure, everybody cares about goals, but just to limit it to Europe, and I don't know. It just seems to me that it's kind of counterfeit. The whole thing's counterfeit.
Does you know why people allow Luis Suarez to be Luis Suarez?
Because he scored goals. No, I get that. And if you win the European Golden Boot, I'll celebrate you. No matter, if you're an American, that'd be fantastic. But we're talking about guys that Jozy didn't even lead his league in goals last year.
Yeah.
Didn't even lead his league in goals. Now, if he won the Golden Boot in the Eredivisie, I'd be like, oh, that's great.
But listen, you're making it sound like that's what you have to do to have respect. Clinton Dempsey never lead in APL, but he was a top 10 goal scorer in one of the best leagues in the world, and that means something.
And that's worth celebrating. But we're not. I just don't think that we should be like identifying some record and hold it up as a standard, considering that there are differences between what the league Clint Dempsey was playing in, and the league that Jozy Altidore was playing. Clearly,
I'm just saying that you rarely get such apples to apples comparisons as two American strikers playing for the same team in the same league with the same kind of expectations. And if Aron Jóhannsson is able to surpass Jozy Altidore, you can make a very good case that he may be a better choice as a striker, and maybe not for the U.S. team, but as a striker. But the number of goals is only a very small part of whether or not he is a better fit for the national team to start. That's only one little tiny. The number of goals in the Eredivisie is just one little tiny part. I agree. If you look at Kyle Beckerman's passing percentage and Michael Bradley's passing percentages, they're going to be pretty on par with each other. Where they do those passes, what else they do besides the passing. If you're just going to look at one facet of a midfielder, it's going to tell you what you want it to say. There's a lot more to be said about how each of those guys play, but you can still hold the candle to the fact that if Michael Bradley next year does 90% passing percentage, similar to what I think that's probably around some in the neighborhood of Kyle Beckerman does in MLS, you can at least draw that. I'm saying there's one thing then that you can unite those two guys and compare them to each other on. And just like the goals in the Eredivisie can be for Jozy and Aron Jóhannsson. Yeah, okay. I mean, the funny thing about those passing stats, and I agree with you, and any stats lack you have to provide context, especially in this sport. The subjective, you're passing to your center back 40 times a game, it doesn't mean much. Exactly. If you're making 75-yard passes in a game, are you really comparable to somebody who makes 25 passes and 3 of those are killer through balls? I mean, that's the thing. Would you rather have Javi Morales' ability to put a through ball, or Kyle Beckerman's 90% passer rating? They're different things from the same part of the field. You have to decide what each player does. The stats are very, very shifty, and you can make them say whatever you want. But with certain positions, it dominates, and goals are like that for strikers. But since you brought this up, MLSsoccer.com did a piece on breaking down passing stats. And just because you brought him up as an example, do you know what number overall in the league, by percentage, by passing accuracy percentage, Kyle Beckerman was in MLS in 2020? Is it midfielders to midfielders, or is it all guys? This is everybody. This is the entire league. Okay, you said percentage, correct? Yes, percentage. But I still think there should be a threshold for number of passes to make you. First of all, there's no 90% passer in MLS, so let's just say that. Really, I would have said I would have truly thought he was somewhere in that range right there. I'll say 85 for Kyle Beckerman. That's your number. That's your percentage guess? Yes. Okay, he's actually at 83.12 per. And I would say that puts him in the top 7 passers in MLS. You're not even remotely close. Really? Not even remotely close. He is number 30 on this list. Okay, and so this list has to have something that's unique about it. But tell me who the top people are. It actually illustrates perfectly what we're talking about with context. Okay, number 1 overall, just to get into this a little bit. Number 1 overall, Jozy Altidore, 88.58%. Same part of the field. That's impressive then. Number 2, Nat Borchers, 87.5%. Now, this is where I have issue. Okay, first of all, Nat Borchers with roughly 500 less passes than Jozy Altidore. Okay, that's why I want midfielder the midfielder, because you start getting skewed because he's passing to Chris Schuler or whoever's next to him. Probably 80% of that time is to the other center back. Exactly. It's about context. Not under pressure. Nat Borchers had 700 passes in his own half, 272 in the opponent's half. Jozy Altidore had 838 passes in the opponent's half. So he had more passes over in the opponent's half than Nat Borchers had. Then almost as many as Borchers had overall. So there you go. All right, I'll just run these down very quickly. Ned Grabovoy, 86.99. Matteo Ferrari, 86.9. Matt Hedges, Diego Chara, Alessandro Nesta. You stop me if you want to comment on this. James Riley at number 8. Stop. So a right back on the worst team in the league is one of the best passers league. This is why it's very, you got to just do midfielders to midfielders. He's one of the most accurate passers in the league. And again, let's provide some context. Actually, James Riley made more passes in the opponent's half than he did in his own half. But then again, it's 984 passes total.
And it's they're probably very short, but he's passing to a midfielder who's passing it back to him, he's passing it 5 yards to another midfielder who's cutting in. I mean, that's
what does surprise me is that Jozy Altidore is that far ahead from Kyle Beckerman. So my question to you then: does Michael Bradley finish next season as the number one center midfielder in passing?
I think that's a difficult bet to make, so I'm going to say no. I think I take it the field.
But if I asked you to pick two center midfielders out of the entire league, one of your two would have been either Jozy Altidore or Kyle Beckerman, right?
I would have guessed that they were both up there. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I think it's easier to make this guess than you may think.
Well, but look. If you want to take like for like in terms of positioning, I mean, Jozy Altidore, Chara at 86.36 is number 6. Davidson, no, that's not comparable. Janino is number 10, 85.7. Let's see. I'm looking. Rafael.
All I'm hearing from you is that Janino is better than Kyle Beckerman.
I'm not so sure about that. Different, not exactly the same player. I mean, again, everybody's got different responsibilities within their own setup, so that's part of this too.
Okay, but so given this, what we were just talking about, the whole point of that got this onto this is talking about goals as a good indicator for strikers. Do goals mean that much more than like passing percentage for a midfielder, that goals are a better indicator of a striker's worth than passing percentage for a midfielder?
I think that's a ridiculous question that doesn't deserve an answer.
That's not
because what's the point? I don't think either one of those are a good way to judge those positions by themselves. I'm just saying by themselves. So why would I even bother answering the question? I think passing percentage is probably a better way to judge as defensive midfielders.
Okay, so how do you know that Falcao is a good striker? How do you know that Luis Suarez is a good striker?
Well, by the numbers of goals he scored, clearly.
The amount of money they make?
Well, that too, but there's also a track record there. I mean, part of the deal is consistency, right? I mean, has Aron Jóhannsson done so much in his career? And I'm not saying he's not a talent, and I'm not saying I don't want him on the field in Brazil at some point, but has he done so much that you're convinced that against better competition, he's going to be as consistent as he is in Holland? I'm not, and partly part of that.
Jozy has made a very tough road for Aron Jóhannsson. If anything, he's devalued what Aron Johansson's doing by what he's done in the EPL. Correct?
516, you're on the air.
Hey,
yes.
Tyler.
What's up,
The other day, Don Garber proposed a new playoff format. I was wondering, is there a possibility that you have a playoff format in which you have the first two games and they all of a sudden there's no away goal rule. You have, and if you're tied, you go to a third game, and based on that third game, it's winner takes all.
Well, there's no away goal rule now. It's most goals scored overall, regardless if it's away or home.
Okay, he's just that is an interesting proposal. The problem with that is that it's unpredictable.
The scheduling. I mean, you think have MLS Cup on one weekend. If every playoff matchup's adding 4 days to its run, it's gonna make it really hard to isolate a window for TV, for television, or all sorts of stuff. And MLS is not in the listen. If MLS was one of the top television sports in this country, they could do this kind of thing. They could push to when they want to push. MLS doesn't rate high enough to say, oh, we're going to give you 5 days notice on when we're going to have our premier cup final.
There's just too many moving parts in that scenario. I don't mind the idea of an extra game to decide it, and I think that's a very fair way. If you have a series and you split the first two games and you don't do aggregate score, then a third game's not a nice way to do it. In fact, MLS used to do 3-game series way, way, way back in the day.
They also did shootouts.
Yes, they also did shootouts. So,
to answer or to address one of the topic that from the caller, Don Garber did talk about a few playoff changes, and he mentioned one that I've been asking for so long, and that's giving the higher ranked team choice if they want the first game or the second leg. And I think that's a huge and good decision.
You say your name was Carlos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that? I mean, I know that's not as far as you're going with your 3-game setup, but
my 3-game setup would be if it's tied.
Oh, you mean on aggregate?
2 legs.
Okay, so if
it's tied after 2 legs on aggregate, then you would have a third game.
I see. So, that's essentially a replay, like the English do for the FA Cup. I mean, that's essentially what you're talking about, a replay.
They do single fixture replays, though.
Yeah, no, they do. They do single. This is different in that it's an aggregate score over 2 legs. I don't have any real like base problem with it. Again, I just think it's a scheduling issue. But
it's a scheduling issue. But even so, even if you did do a third match replay, it would be at the home team's venue, I'm sure. But assuming that it's going to be the same playoff structure as the last couple of years, and I think the simple tweak of having the the higher ranked team have choice. I think because routinely you're seeing the higher seed go out. So what real advantage do they have?
No, I see. Here's the thing. I don't think you correct the system to ensure that the higher seed is successful more often.
No, it's about giving someone.
Yes.
It's about incentive.
Absolutely. You give the higher seed enough incentive to go for that higher seed. I mean, right now, what do you have? You have the Supporter Shield, the Champions League spot. And really, after that, it gets a little dicey. What else is there to play for?
Yeah, we talk all the time about it. Listen, last season's a bad example because never before in MLS has there been a finish like the finish that happened last season where every team is so close to each other and so far into a chance of making the playoffs. There's doldrums usually in that September-October run. And this would give every team in the playoffs something to shoot for, even if they can't get one of the top two Champions League spots.
The one thing I'll say about I give less of my concern to the playoff format than a lot of people do. I do think they need to find a way to reward the higher seeds. I do think right now, let me say it this way. If MLS is going to have playoffs, which I'm fine with, do not increase the number of playoff teams as the number of teams rises. 10 is a great number. 10 is a fantastic. You got a play-in game, fine, whatever. You got those other three teams that
the wild card. Yeah.
Leave it the way it is. You're gonna have 20. You're gonna have 21 teams in 2015. Not this season, but 2015. You'll have 21 teams. Keep it at 10. That's less than half. I think that's incentivizing the season.
MLS loves to tinker, dude. They love to tinker.
This is my plea right now. I'm looking into the camera. I'm saying, Don Garber, Board of Governors, I realize so many of you really want the playoffs to expand so you have a better shot. Don't do it. Make the regular season mean more. That's all.
Make it more entertaining. I think it makes it more entertaining having less teams as well. It doesn't water it down. We just heard Steve Nicol talk about how watered down the player pool is going to be as this happens. We don't want to water down the playoffs as well.
No, we certainly don't want to do that. We don't want to water down the playoffs. Did we touch on Archer yet? I mean, I know we usually do it at the top of the show. Did I mention that?
Oh, you mean Archer Vice?
Archer Vice. I'm sorry. Do I have to say Archer Vice now on?
I love that they actually did that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, they changed they changed the opening credits to say Archer Vice. Does that mean the show's name has officially changed? Because my guide still says Archer,
and my heart still says Archer.
Well, I don't think it really matters. I mean, tack the Vice on if you want. It's about they're selling cocaine now. It's fantastic. Without giving any spoilers away. That the ending to the last episode, were you expecting that? Is that where you thought this was going to go?
I remember what was the ending.
Oh, they're all in the hot tub at the end. Not ISIS people.
I didn't understand it.
Oh,
I didn't get it. Okay. You'll have to tell me off the air because I didn't get it. I was like, I don't understand what this is about. I need to go back and watch it one more time.
I don't have time for that off the air nonsense. If you have not seen this most recent episode of Archer and you don't want a spoiler, turn your podcast machine or your internet down for like 10 seconds or 30 seconds while I explain this to Jared, and then come right back. If you don't want a spoiler,
three gay dudes in a hot tub. Go.
Okay. Here, the bottom line is that they conned Archer and ISIS, and the whole thing that the only reason Ramon did what he did was to get the kiss. That's the joke.
Okay, then I did get it. I thought there was something else I was missing. I was like, okay, that's all that they were trying to settle there?
Because at the end, the guy's like, that was a stupid plan because we already had the coke and the money, and now you've gotten rid of our...
I'm telling you, when you're a handsome man, a kiss means a lot.
All right, we're done. Turn back on your internet machines. You can't hear me. 217, you're on the air.
Hey, this is Doug from Champaign. You guys, you're not covering the big story from yesterday.
What's that?
Canada beat Fort Lauderdale Strikers.
All right. Do we want to laugh at Canada a little bit? I mean, I feel bad. I feel bad.
Well, the U.S. is playing Sao Paulo. I guess that's a step up.
Well, there's a little bit of a step up from Fort Lauderdale Strikers to Sao Paulo. And there's also the fact that Canada had gone like a million years since scoring a goal or something, and they finally managed to score.
I didn't even know they were playing friendlies. I mean, they're so far off my radar right now. Have they ended the D-Row experiment? Is D-Row officially not a part of that national team now?
Yeah, I think they've moved on from D-Row. They've got the new guy, and I can't recall his name because he really doesn't matter in my world. I apologize, but
Rob, a friend?
No, the new coach. And he's Floro, I think his name is. He's going young, as they should. I mean, go young. Benito Floro. Floro. Whatever it is. Benito something. His name is Benito. And they're going young.
Speaking of the U.S. playing Sao Paulo, though, I was kind of wishy-washy on the U.S.'s trip to Brazil. The more I watch and find out about it, and when I see the level of play they're doing, I kind of like the idea of, if you don't make the Confederations Cup, have this kind of consolation trip to Brazil. It can only help, right? I think so. I mean, look, you're not playing in the same kind of environment that you're going to face when you start the World Cup, but you at least get yourself acclimated to, the surroundings. You're not as shot. Now, is it interesting to you though that the U.S. is the only team doing this? Are we that far ahead, or do we need this advantage?
I don't know that it. I mean, most teams don't have this kind of camp right now, right? I mean, most of the teams that are in the World Cup don't have the type of the amount of
Scandinavian, even German teams are off during this time of the year, though.
Yeah, the German teams are on their break, but I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't seem like something that seems like something below Germany.
It's just weird when I see the U.S. is the only one doing something. I try to figure out if we're pioneers or have a crutch that we need. I don't know, but either way, I like the idea of doing it.
It can't hurt. Like you said, it can't hurt. I don't care about the results, to be honest with you. I heard they lost to Sao Paulo, then they beat Sao Paulo. I don't care. I really don't care what the results were, who scored the goals. I mean, clearly I want them to be playing well as a team, but this is Camp Strudel. We know what this is supposed to be. We'll see what happens against South Korea. I'm just glad that they're down there and getting acclimated. And
this is a little more meaty than a Camp Strudel. It's more like a Camp Schnitzel. It's something a little bit more strong than Strudel. Strudel's got a dainty Danish kind of feel to it. Schnitzel, though, is like it's hammered fried meat.
That's right.
Have you never had Schnitzel?
I've never had Schnitzel.
You're Googling Schnitzel, aren't you?
I Googled Schnitzel. I've heard the word 1,000 times. I've never... A boneless meat, thinned with a meat tenderizer, coated with flour, beaten eggs and breadcrumbs, and then fried. It sounds like a chicken fried steak.
You realize how cosmopolitan you just made me sound because I already knew it was tenderized and all that stuff. I'm not I'm a worldly man.
Well, it sounds and looks just like chicken fried steak. Is that basically
it is like German fancy-fied chicken fried steak.
Okay. All right. Well, now I know what it is. I honestly, I don't know that it ever occurred to me, what is Schnitzel?
Just a German. Wiener Schnitzel's kind of messed it up for everybody.
Okay. Is that what's happening? Like, yeah. Okay, so it's not like Camp Blautwurst or whatever, or Camp, which is, I think, blood sausage or something like that.
Yeah, that doesn't roll off the tongue. Camp Schnitzel comes off the tongue, right?
Camp Schnitzel. Jared DuBois has decided you are now all required to use Camp Schnitzel.
By the way, I never Googled Molhawk to figure out if I coined that phrase or that already exists.
It's got to exist. It's the internet. It's out there. You know what's out there.
Come on. Dang it. It's already in their Urban Dictionary. I didn't create it.
Yep. Phone number is 201-430-2378. If you have thoughts, concerns, and questions, you call us up and you tell us what they are, and we answer them for you.
By the way, the definition of a Mohawk, according to Urban Dictionary, the Mohawk is an elusive branch of the mullet family. Part mullet, part Mohawk. You can find the Mohawk at places like racetracks, dollar stores, and monster truck rallies.
Sounds very Urban Dictionary.
And super drafts.
It's an MLS SuperDraft. I'm going down our list. All right. So we talked about Jozy. He played in the League Cup semifinal. Was a substitute. They went to extra time after Manchester United overcame a deficit from the first leg. Then Sunderland scores. I'm not even sure who that was, by the way. Sunderland
119th minute, I believe.
And then they let Manchester United go right back down the other end, and Chicharito scored. And by the way, saw a lot of like great finish. Look at Hernandez scoring a goal.
Oh, here comes the Mexico hate.
No, I actually like the kid for the most part, but he was this close to putting it over the bar. Go back and watch the replay. He nearly missed it.
Or did he come this close to absolutely perfectly striking it?
Yeah, maybe you could say it that way. I'm going to choose the negative. He is Mexican.
That's what I'm saying. It's your American bias. You can't give him credit.
No, look, he scored the goal. Manchester United got back in it, but that penalty shootout. Have you seen any? You were working.
I just got text from my brother saying that the game was crazy, and I heard that Jozy did not take a penalty in it.
He did not. Apparently, he was next up, but they went through 5 rounds, and three penalties were made. 3. That's it.
10 shots?
3 were made.
That's what you get when you have an English penalty shootout.
It's a disaster.
England on England crime.
Well, no English players scored their penalties. So
you didn't have to tell me that.
You just assumed, right?
Yes.
Because it's England and they don't score penalties. It's pretty amazing. So Sunderland on to the
That's
League
like
Cup
telling
final.
me that Nickelback made a crappy album. I already assumed it.
Here's the thing about the League Cup final. Sunderland is going to be playing Manchester City, who demolished West Ham in their semifinal by an aggregate scoreline of 9-0. I think Sunderland might be a little better than West Ham, but is that going to be an absolute drubbing or what?
It's going to be pretty ugly. See, but listen, I guess Manchester United is not what they should be anyway. So you can't take much away from the fact that they beat Manchester United. It seems like every team lately is beating or at least giving them a run for their money. But one thing I will say is that Sunderland's a team that is desperate for something positive to get them going. And here's something positive they have fallen in their laps. I don't think it's enough to raise them up or get them high enough to think they can actually play against Manchester City. The only thing they might be able to hope for is that Manchester City has a letdown because they're paying attention to the league and because they're in the middle of a title race, and they may not really rate this competition that much when they're in the middle of a title hunt.
It's possible. I mean, hopefully Jozy gets a chance to play at Wembley in the League Cup final, the Capital One Cup final, whatever it's called now. Because, I mean, that'd just be a cool thing. I mean, not that many Americans have played at Wembley. In fact, John Harkes is the only one that comes to mind right away. And I'm sure Tim Howard has played there as well. Yeah. So a couple of Americans have made appearances in cup finals at Wembley. And we know that the U.S. national team has gone and played there. But
there's a number of Americans that have played. There's a number of Americans that played in Wembley, but they're all on NFL teams.
Well, Jada Merritt played at Wembley, right? Wasn't the
promotion game?
Yeah, the promotion playoffs happen at Wembley as well. So there's a couple out there. All right, moving along. What other underwhelming storyline would Jared DuBois like to talk about this evening on the Best Soccer Show?
I mean, there's not that much out there, to be honest with you. But you and I both alluded to a story last show. We never got around to it. I'd really like to try to hit it here. And this was the story on the very website. There's a shirt that you're wearing right now. American Soccer Now put out a story, and this one was done by Brooke Tunstall. And it's a really good read on MLS. Does MLS block college underclassmen from the draft? And this is something I hadn't really thought about or even heard anything about until this one came out.
Yeah, I admit that it had never really occurred to me before either. And there were some details in the story, in Brooke's story, that kind of opened your eyes a bit to the way that MLS runs their draft. Now, I don't know if I was just bringing along my assumptions from other sports drafts, or
I'm sure I did.
It just didn't occur to me that MLS. I don't know. I mean, I should have assumed that MLS has weird rules for the draft. They have weird rules for everything, but stuff like, you're not eligible for the MLS draft unless they put you on their list. It's not like every college player who is done with their eligibility, because that's their rule, can be drafted. You have to be on their list. Now, I'm sure it's a fairly exhaustive, comprehensive list, but still, that's kind of weird, right? I mean,
is this a draft, or is this like an exclusive LA nightclub? How do you get on the list? It's just weird to me because, and this is the conversation you and I had a little bit of conversation. We teased this a little bit between the two of us, and we kind of held it off for the on the air. But my kind of question was, if you're a really good player in some place like Mississippi, or our favorite place to use, North or South Dakota, and you just don't have the infrastructure to get seen, scouted, put on a development academy team, yet you're ready to play, and yet you have the ability to play and produce an MLS. Yeah. Unless you get put on this list. Once again, you're probably not going to a Division I school even if you're in some of those places. But it seems like you have to go a really long way to be able to meet the standards MLS has out there for eligible players. And you're looking at 22 years old before you can just opt in whether MLS wants you to or not.
Right. I mean, at some point, I imagine that if you don't go to college and therefore you don't have to worry about things like eligibility, you can sign with whoever you want. I imagine that. but I don't know that. And
I
clearly,
feel it's almost like there's a punishment for going to college right now. And as if college wasn't a big enough burden for MLS and soccer players in general, because it's a whole system that the rest of the world doesn't really use. But on top of that, now you're saying you're making a minimum 3 to 4 year commitment before you can turn pro, unless you meet this very small, I don't know. I'm not sure how many underclassmen were even on the list this year. Probably somewhere in the 20 range. However many Generation Adidas there probably were out there.
Right.
There's a very small niche that you have to. In NBA, I'm just used to the NBA. I guess I was raised as an NBA fan. Kids come out all the time. What if you're a really good player? Maybe you're just a crappy student. You're going to get punished for that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Just to kind of make sure that we have all the details right for anybody who's not following, the only underclassmen allowed in the MLS draft, meaning the only underclassmen available to teams to draft, are the GA kids. If you sign a Generation Adidas contract, that typically means what? We've identified you as a special talent. Here's some extra money, essentially, to get you started on your career path. And, we'll pay for, I think part of the GA deals, they'll pay for college if you don't work out or if you decide to go back, whatever it is.
The good example in the story that Brooke uses is Dylan Powers. And it's such a good example because he's so fresh in our minds as a great rookie college draft pick. And he wanted to come out after his junior year and wasn't allowed to. Now, granted, he spins it as, and maybe it's not spinning, it could be the truth, that he's probably a better position now, a better player for having one last year in senior year. But this is a kid that obviously could make the jump and wasn't allowed to. Maybe he got stunted a year, to be honest with you. Maybe he could have been even better. You cannot say absolutely that he would have been a better player, but what you can say absolutely is that he missed a year of professional experience because of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking back over the story. Again, definitely go read this. American Soccer Now, does MLS block college underclassmen from draft? And you wonder whether it's a right thing or wrong thing to do. And at one point, Brooke addresses this. MLS claims altruistic reasons for keeping unsigned underclassmen from the draft. The league doesn't want underclassmen to declare for the draft and then lose their eligibility if they don't get drafted, which is fine. Okay. Here in the next paragraph, here's where the plot thickens. As it turns out, MLS has an exception, albeit one that few in college soccer know about. If an underclassman who isn't GA signed with an agent, which is an NCAA violation, would cost him his eligibility, or is academically ineligible, or has lost his eligibility, he can be put on their draft eligible list. So, if you're an underclassman, here's the message: sign with an agent and
flunk out,
and then MLS, and then you have to petition MLS and say, "Hey, look, I'm ready to come out."
But there also is this other backdoor rule too that, once again, I had no idea this existed, because everything you hear about NCAA rules applies to basketball and football because of the high level of attention that they have. But This is a quote directly from the NCAA rule: an enrolled student athlete in a sport other than basketball or football may enter a professional league's draft one time during his or her collegiate career without jeopardizing his or her eligibility in the applicable sport, provided the student athlete is not drafted and within 72 hours following the draft, he or she declares his or her intention to resume participation in other collegiate athletics. So the altruistic reason for MLS doesn't exist. If the guy doesn't get drafted, and as long as he doesn't sign with an agent.
Sign with an agent. That's the key. The signing with an agent. And there may be a specific requirement for MLS play. Well, no, that's not true. You don't have to sign with an agent to be drafted, right? I mean, you can declare yourself your agent if you want to. And there are plenty of MLS players who have represented themselves. I think it's
Chris Wondolowski.
Unwise. Well, Chris got 7 figures, so good for Chris. But I mean, a lot of guys have probably hurt themselves in the negotiating process by not having an agent. But I get it. You don't make that much money. You don't want to give a guy whatever the percentage is these days, some 10s or north of 10%.
Yeah, why do it when you have LegalZoom out there?
I can file my own paperwork. I'm my own person. I'm smart. I can figure it out.
So, question for you: with this upcoming collective bargaining agreement, is this something that maybe now gets the attention and gets brought up in the CBA? And would MLS players? Do you think average MLS player wants this rule in place to protect the eligibility of college players and maybe keep the pool deeper at times rather than water it down with a bunch of guys? Or do they want the freedom for undergraduates to have whatever ability they want to enter the draft?
Typically, it's interesting when you talk about CBA negotiations and unions and dealing with leagues. Typically, the players already in the league have no concern about the players not in the league. So from an MLS Players Union perspective, as it's been with the NBA Players Union or MLS, the Major League Baseball players, or I'm sorry, NFL, because this has been a big issue in the NFL with sophomores and freshmen. They don't necessarily want those guys coming out as freshmen and taking jobs. I
completely feel it's a different argument, though, because the physical nature of the NFL, guys 18, 19 years old are probably not going to be ready physically to do that.
That's true. That's true, and I agree with that to a certain extent. I still think it's a restriction of trade. I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about, a restriction of trade. You are preventing
MLS and every soccer league around the world loses the ability to use any kind of physicality as their argument when you have development academy players at 16 years old coming up to full teams.
Sure. I think the bigger issue here isn't necessarily about whether it's fair or not to underclassmen. I mean, that's certainly an argument to have. For me, the interesting thing is that there are new wrinkles being thrown at MLS, and one of them we saw with Andre Lewis. He gets signed by the Cosmos before MLS gets to him, between the combine and the draft. And now MLS has to work out a deal with the Cosmos to get him to the team that drafted him because the Whitecaps didn't know any better. What's to stop the NASL from, and I don't know how much money there will be for this, it might not be widespread, but what's to stop the NASL from going after college underclassmen and saying, hey, we'll give you your opportunity right now. We'll pay you $70,000 to come out. I mean, what's to stop them from doing that? And then MLS is missing out on those players later on or has to work out some deal to get the best college talent into their league. I think that's a fascinating deal. 304, you're on the air.
Hey, guys. How are you guys?
We're good. We're impassioned.
Good.
Go ahead.
Good. Hey, I've been a fan for quite a while since I think you guys started the show back I guess 2 years ago or so, and I've probably listened to the majority of your podcasts since you've.
I feel a butt coming on. I feel a butt. I feel some kind of criticism coming on.
It's like under the covers at night. I feel a butt.
Go ahead.
Well, first let me say that I think you guys are super talented. You're my soccer resource. I'd prefer to listen to you guys than like Alexi Lawless or Taylor Twellman or anybody.
But
I think your analysis is better, and you guys are like in soccer.
We're doing a different thing. Let's just say that we're doing a different thing than Alexi and Taylor.
One day you guys are both going to be in the studio somewhere, and you're going to have your own show. And but I'm not trying to flatter you. I just like I said, I've been a fan for a long time, and I wanted to ask you guys a personal question.
Uh-oh.
I was wondering about how much soccer do you guys play? If you guys could just, answer, did you guys play in high school? Did you go to college and play? Or do you play in an adult league at least? And so I'm just going to hang up and listen. I'm sure other fans are curious too.
I appreciate it. All right.
It's actually something that came up in your Reddit, your AMA.
It did. We're absolutely going to be judged on this, by the way, right? This is one of those things people... for some people, I'm not saying everybody, but for some people, you have to meet a certain standard of play, right?
How many games does Grant Wall play a week? I love me some Grant, but I mean, listen, it doesn't mean you have to
Right. No, and look, I played until, here's my story. I'll do it real fast because it's pretty quick. I played as a kid. I was a military brat, moved around a lot, started playing and really fell in love with soccer when I was a kid in Bossier City, Louisiana, which is where my dad was based. I had a great league. We were a base team. We were really good. It was, I think, before the explosion of travel soccer, and I was only 7 or 8 at the time, but I loved it. I got to be 12 years old, and we moved to Montgomery, Alabama, and whether because my parents didn't look into it enough or because it was easy, I ended up in a YMCA league, and it was dog doo-doo compared to what I had been through, and I decided I didn't like it. It wasn't good enough for me, and I quit soccer, and then
that's a good spin.
I didn't really... it wasn't serious enough, I guess. I had a standard that I was like 12 and I have a soccer standard, and the practices were joke fests and the coaches didn't know what they were talking about. This is Alabama in the early 90s. What do you expect?
Well, plus it's soccer in Alabama.
Well, they play soccer in Alabama. There's some really good leagues up near Birmingham. There's really good talent there, but this particular place in Alabama didn't have, at least, again, there may have been something better, but my parents didn't find it. So I ended up dropping soccer. I've been, since then, I've been a fan a casual fan who really started to take things seriously, early 20s again. And then that's how I got here. I don't have any particular high level playing experience. I didn't play in high school. This is just where I am as a fan.
Well, for me, I've played all my life. I still play. Due to my work schedule, I only get to play about once a week now. When I first started my new job, I was playing up to about 3 times a week up until about 3 years ago. Having kids and having a job that works 12 hours tends to do that to you. Played high school, captain my high school team. Went to a junior college that didn't have a soccer program, so that's where I kind of unfortunately petered out. I still kick myself today for not going out for the team when I went to San Diego State, but because a lot of good players came out of San Diego State. I mean, there's a big run of players and personalities also that came out of San Diego State. Alan Hopkins, Jimmy Conrad's 2 of them, Mark Rogandino. There's a few guys out there. So, but I still play. I play as much as I can, as much as it lets me. And I'd play more if I had less going on in my life. If I wasn't doing this show, I'd be in a Sunday league. But because we have Sunday shows, I don't really have enough time to do both.
To be honest with you, I should be playing. I want to be playing. I haven't figured out a way to do that. I live in a small town.
So if you have a rec team in the DC metro area, Jason Davis is available as a free agent.
It's not that simple. I mean, I live an hour plus outside of DC, so I've got to find something relatively local. I think I probably can. I just got to do some work.
Not just that, but I grew up in a very big soccer area. Like it's not just Southern California, but where I live, and Jason's heard me talk about all the time, in Empire, lots of pros came out of this area.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in this area.
Bocanegra and Brian Dunseth and
Landon Donovan, Marisa Dew.
Yeah,
I mean, Nick Raimondo. I played high school ball against Bocanegra and Raimondo, but there's a lot of stuff going on here. And I really, really started paying attention to the U.S. national team when my high school friend Josh, his brother, made it big, and that's Landon Donovan. That really kind of piqued my interest when I saw my friend's younger brother playing for the national team.
Have you ever revealed that on this show, by the way?
I must have at some point,
I don't think you have. I don't think you have ever revealed that you are buddies, friends with Landon Donovan's older brother.
Oh yeah. His older brother and I went to school since kindergarten all the way. We were captains of our high school team together.
Well, there you go. 724, you're on the air.
Hey guys, I just wanted to first off say I came to soccer about the same way you guys did. So it's
well, we have different stories. I think that a lot of people can identify with my story. I'm not saying it means you should listen to me. Like if people want to say, well, he didn't play in high school, I don't really care what he says. That's fine. That's your opinion. You can do that. I'm gonna keep talking. But
it's not like you can't teach English if it wasn't your first language. You know?
I think a lot of people have something similar to me, and I think we're gonna get past that pretty quickly. Go ahead.
But anyway, what I wanted to talk about with you guys was U.S. men's national team question. Where do you guys feel Jeff Cameron fits in the equation right now? I think he is a starting right back on the team, and I think he's top half of Premier League right backs, and I don't think he's getting that attention from Jurgen Klinsmann. And I wondered, come World Cup time, do you guys think he's going to be in the starting lineup, in the starting 11?
It's tough to say he's not in getting Jurgen Klinsmann's attention when his peak and really good run right now of form is coinciding with the fact there's no national team games for him to play in. That's when it's kind of unfair to say he's not getting Jurgen Klinsmann's attention.
Yeah, look, I mean, based on the evidence that we have, he's never thought of Jeff Cameron as a solution at right back, right? That's fair to say.
So I don't say never, but he's been tried and probably didn't rate in Jurgen Klinsmann's
okay, I mean, look, again, based on what he's doing for Stoke, I would like to see him start. Now, I will say that there is certainly an argument if whether or not Jeff Cameron is the type of fullback Jurgen Klinsmann wants to play. I'm not sure that's the case. I think that Cameron is serviceable going forward and pretty good as a defender. Is that the kind of fullback Jurgen Klinsmann wants to play?
The fullback that Jurgen Klinsmann wants is in the camp that's going on right now. They're just probably not ready to make that jump.
Right.
The style of fullback is in this camp, though.
Right. The DeAndre Yedlins of the world, the Chris Klutz of the world on the other side are the guys. That's what Klinsmann wants to have available. He doesn't have an experienced version of that right now.
The other part of the caller's question was, who do we think will be starting at right back in the World Cup? And I'm going to say, I mean, just because of the depth and what's going on right now, I still think it's Steve Cherundolo's job if he can get into a camp.
I just saw something today. Apparently, Cherundolo's still having injury problems and is training on his own.
Didn't he go 90 over the weekend?
I don't know. Maybe I misread that. Maybe I'm late on that news. I'm gonna go back and look. Check it out. Thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. 402, you're on the air.
Hi, this is Ezekiel from Atlanta.
What's up, Ezekiel?
Hey, been trying to call for a little while, but I was in Europe traveling on business. So I'm going to go back to an earlier story.
Go for it.
Okay, spit it out. Let's go.
So when you're discussing Bradley's move, and people were having issues with it,
yeah,
I had the same kind of issues immediately. But then when you think about stories like the Nigeria national team or Colombia, where I think that they've focused on players playing in the domestic league, or even Russia, I've heard about that. I think it makes sense to have, all your players playing in the same league.
Well, I'll say about
a lot of. Go ahead. Sorry, Ezekiel. Go ahead.
No.
There's a lot of good reasons for wanting as many of your national teamers to be playing in the same league as possible, whether it's your league or another league. I mean, from an MLS perspective, it's good because it brings eyeballs to the league. From a national team perspective, it's a style thing. It's certainly familiarity with each other. It's location and being able to gather relatively quickly and not have to fly across the world to get there. There are a lot of good reasons for it. I don't know that they always trump the reasons to have guys playing in the best leagues in the world, but there are reasons we can point to, right?
Yeah. Do you think Colombia, the injury today aside, take that out of it for a second. Do you think Colombia really wants Falcao in Colombia or playing in Europe? For your top level players, you probably want them testing themselves at the top level. For the guys in the tier right underneath that, there's something to be said about being close, playing a style of ball that's going to be familiar when they make the transition to the national team. Playing sometimes with guys that are going to be on the same team as the national team, if they're on the same team in the club team. There's a lot of advantages for being local. I think the U.S. doesn't rate their domestic league enough. I think most American fans don't rate their domestic league enough to not see it as a step down in a number of different ways.
Right. Yeah. That's where much going.
And that's exactly where I see the problem. When you see the news about those other stories, it makes sense. But when you read this same sort of thing about the U.S., people just aren't on that page yet.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you could even say, there could be a day where the majority of our players are playing in Canada, America, and Mexico, with a few of the marquee players in Europe or wherever.
I think that for a lot of people, that would be a perfect scenario. Thanks for the call, Ezekiel. I think everybody's having a good time tonight, just chilling out. It's one of those kind of Wednesdays. Look, there's no perfect recipe for this. I tend to think that in the long run, a better MLS is better for the national team. And I'm not saying that MLS has to work towards some kind of national team excellence. It's not their responsibility to do that. It'll be a byproduct.
Oh, it's a better. No, it's big, but it's about investing in a better league too. Though it's exactly a win-win on those two fronts in that way. When you think of the immediate, when you don't think about the immediate 2014 World Cup being 5 months away or whatever it is now, 4 months away right now, wherever it is, you get nervous about the deal. If the World Cup was 4 years away, I think people would meet the Bradley news with a much different look, because it's a win for MLS in terms of quality that's bringing to the league, notoriety, and maybe a little bit of legitimacy that is given to the league by a player of Michael Bradley's stature coming back. It's a win for the national team because you're hopefully improving MLS to a point where you're investing more in MLS, where it can affect a larger talent pool that you can bring up to the national team.
Yeah,
it's only because the World Cup's knocking at our door.
Very carefully.
Sorry, I dropped some Archer stuff over the top of you there. I really didn't mean to do that. I thought I worked that one in.
Shut your various holes and listen to me very carefully.
There you go. It's an ongoing process. We don't have starting a domestic league for dummies. We didn't have that in '96. We don't have a make your national team a World Cup challenger for dummies. We don't know the way to do this, especially because the situation in this country is so unique. But I am willing to have Michael Bradley here because I trust Michael Bradley mostly. But I'm willing to have Michael Bradley here in MLS if it means that down the road MLS is better than it would have been otherwise. That's the trade-off I'm willing to make.
Yeah, basically, to rephrase it a different way, I'm willing to have Michael Bradley here for the trade-off that might mean another, 25, 26-year-old of his same caliber may come to MLS as well.
Sure, that and
he doesn't have to be American to come here.
Again, helps make the league better, which helps improve the quality of the players coming into the league, American players. And then those players are better, and then they could, they get up to the national team level. The national team is better. Blah, 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 blah. It's a whole lot of things that are.
Would you say it takes a village, Jason?
I'm sorry. It does take a village to raise a national team. It takes a village. There's absolutely no doubt about that. All right, I'm looking down this thing. Tony Cassio on loan, the first intra-league loan. Weird. Colorado to Houston. Weird. This is funny. Before we came on the air, I don't know if you can recreate this. I think Jared was honestly offended by he can't play against the Raptors.
No, I think was I offended about that, or was I offended about the Jordani Alvarez one?
Oh, that's right. The two personnel moves that really not that many people are paying attention to. Jordani Alvarez is not a bad player, by the way. In fact, he was on the passing charts. Do you want to know where Jordani Alvarez was in the
above or below to Kyle Beckerman?
Way above.
Really?
Above. Yeah. But he very, very.
I'm going to credit Kyle Beckerman for that because that means Kyle Beckerman's open all the time.
Okay, let me say this. Kyle Beckerman had 2.5 times as many passes as Jordani Alvarez. So there's that. But Jordani Alvarez, number 12, 85.39. Anyway.
You think of another name that has 2 Y's in it? I can't.
Jordani. We'll have to work on that one. All right. So you weren't offended by Tony Cassio, who, by the way, I find that odd that he's going from Colorado, and I know they had a good year, and they found some players to Houston, and maybe Houston needs more creative influence, but I don't know. It just seems odd. It seems an odd situation. Again, he can't play against.
It doesn't. It seems odd to me. I would thought if Colorado's doing a loan to a team in Texas, it would have been Dallas. To be honest with you, you would think that maybe Jorge Pereira. I mean, Oscar Pereira. Wow, where did I get Jorge? Oscar Pereira maybe trying to get one of his old guys back. But the Jordani Alvarez trade, for those people that may not know, he's traded to Orlando City. Now, first of all, it's weird to trade to another league.
He's not, but he's traded in an MLS context. It's an MLS contract.
To a non-MLS team.
Right, but they're coming in 2015.
Okay, and then in return, loaned back to RSL.
Yes, because Orlando's not playing until 2015.
So basically what Orlando did is they put Jordani Alvarez on layaway.
Oh, man, that is...
They couldn't afford their kid's Christmas gift just yet.
No, need a couple more paychecks. Before you can really buy that.
Plus, how do you even know in a year from now that's the guy? I don't know. It's weird to me to say that's the guy we're gonna make our team around.
Well, I don't know that that's the case. I mean, it's identifying an option, saying, "Hey, if we're putting together a team, and look, they're going to get guys through the expansion draft, but we don't know who's going to be available. Who's surplus to need? Well, who's surplus to need somewhere? Who has the kind of background and has shown the kind of quality that we might need? Oh, look, Jordani Alvarez is out there. Let's call up RSL and see what we can work out. Well, clearly we're not playing this year. You can have him back, and it's a 2017 draft pick that got traded for. I don't know. It is
here's where it makes a little bit of sense for RSL. If RSL's thinking, where are we going to be a year from now? This year, they didn't make it. They're not going to get extra allocation money. They didn't make the CCL. If they're betting that they can build on the last season, get a CCL berth, get more allocation money, next year, Jordani Alvarez goes to Orlando. They've removed all that cap space, and they have a prime position in the middle of midfield where they can go out and buy a player.
Okay, fine. I don't know if it's that far.
You have to think that far ahead. You're making a deal for a year from now.
I don't know. Soccer teams.
That's like me buying the groceries this week for the meal I want to eat 2 weeks from now. I don't know if that's what I'm going to be hungry for in 2 weeks.
Clubs do stuff like this all the time. They do. They do stuff like this. Clubs. There's that weird system in Italy where there's options to buy and half ownership and 75%.
Every time you use Italy as an analogy, I lose faith in MLS.
I'm just saying that this, in the world of weird stuff happening between soccer clubs, this would not be anywhere near the weirdest, is all I'm saying.
The only way it would be weirder is if Traffic owned a piece of this.
That would be weird. All right. Let's go to a phone call. 301, you're on the air.
Hey, this is Amir from Maryland.
Hey, man, what's up?
I was just wondering, you guys not touched on Juan Mata might go to Manchester United.
Did we touch on that? It's not really within this show's sphere, but we can briefly touch on Juan Mata.
I can tell you right now, I think Juan Mata is one of the best players in the EPL. I love the fact he's going to Manchester United, where they are dying for some creative talent in midfield.
Wait, whoa. You say that, but they can't figure out how to use Kagawa. He's pretty damn creative, if you ask me.
Okay, Kagawa's been a problem since they first got there. No, granted, maybe they can't figure out a way.
Wait.
Is he a striker or is he a midfielder?
He's a midfielder. It's a problem because David Moyes doesn't play him. That's why it's a problem.
Okay, so wait. So you're telling me both Moyes and Ferguson were both crazy, and Kagawa's better than what? Listen, he was great before, but there's some reason two very esteemed managers both don't rate him.
Okay, well, let me say this. Let me change this a little bit. If we're going to go off on this tangent, I'm not saying that Kagawa is better than Mata. That's not what I'm saying. Mata's an upgrade. They also have Wayne Rooney in the mix, who has sort of evolved into a withdrawn striker /10 that can be that player for United on most occasions. United's problem for me isn't that. Their problem is further back. They need some steel in midfield, and they don't have it. And Juan Mata
That's what Fellaini was supposed to be, though.
Yeah, but he didn't turn out. So if you're going to go buy in January, you're going to go buy Juan Mata because he's available, and Chelsea says...
So do you play Mata with Carrick, or do you play Mata with Fletcher? Who do you play Mata with?
I don't know. I don't know that this markedly makes them better. Thanks for the call, I appreciate it,
You take Scholes out of cryogenic freeze, and you put him with Mata.
Is that what you do? Okay. Yeah.
Either way, I have a hard time if anyone tries to convince me that Manchester United is not somehow a better team without Mata, with Juan Mata. It's a better team with him.
They are a slightly better team. Whether they're a more effective team is.
If you're playing Darren Fletcher in the midfield, you're saying there's not an upgrade to Mata?
No, it's an upgrade.
Upgrade.
Okay, but does it? Okay, let's say it this way. It's not their main problem. It's not. And it might not make them a top 4 team.
Their main problem is that they think Johnny Evans is a good defender.
Chris Smalling put in a good shift today. Is he your guy?
I thought he was okay on the weekend. I saw him play a little bit as a substitute on the weekend, but I don't know. I grew up a Manchester United fan in a long ways away. I've lost any touch with them.
We haven't really gone down that road with you in a long, long time. It's been a while.
Listen, I lost track. I didn't really care anymore. I came all about whatever Americans are doing. I kind of realized that I'm a fake if I like a European team.
You don't watch the Premier League unless there's an American involved anymore. You're such a patriot. Jared
That's
DuBois.
what I'm saying, dude. If it's not red, white, and blue, I ain't going to have it.
Just briefly, we have very, very few minutes, as in maybe 2. The Manchester City has expanded their empire to another English-speaking nation. They have bought a team in Australia, the Melbourne Heart. So City's doing something big. We don't know quite what's going to mean.
For me, it doesn't make sense to buy into the A-League, though. I mean, everyone wants to equate it with MLS, but MLS is doing much better than the A-League is.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Australia's population is a fraction of what the United States have. They have as many. It's a fraction of the population's a fraction of what we've got, and they've got as many other sports competing for attention as we do. It makes it very difficult. And soccer has made inroads. But yeah, I mean, some of those teams, I think the Melbourne teams will get 25,000, 30,000 because they play in the wrong kind of stadium. They have that issue as well. But some of those teams won't draw 10, and they folded.
What city did they buy into?
Melbourne.
Melbourne. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to buy a team in Australia, you would buy in Melbourne or Sydney, right? You're not buying anywhere else.
The first thing we're going to do when each team signs their marquee player, depending on how much money they invested, lets you know how much Manchester City cares about which one of those two investments more.
I think I don't think there's any doubt that they value the U.S. property more.
All right, if Xavi is what's the equitable pick for NYCFC, what's the premier player that they bring in for Melbourne?
Let's see. Who could they possibly get? Who is
Xavi super light?
This is going to be so mean on some level. If I can actually pull a name, see the problem is I'm drawing a blank.
Darren Fletcher, that's the answer.
No, it would probably end up being somebody. Wow, man, it would be John Joe Shelby. That's who it would be.
I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how each of those two teams spend, how each of those teams progress. It's kind of, I think Manchester City is maybe the first team to franchise really throughout the world. I mean, everyone thought it would be Barcelona. Everyone thought it would be Real Madrid or Manchester United. Manchester City's getting on this train or this horse, but it remains to be seen if it's a financially viable way of marketing your team.
Yep, that's it. That's going to do it for us on a Wednesday night. Jason and Jared, Best Soccer Show. Make sure you go to iTunes. Ratings and reviews help us out a lot. If you are one of the Soccer Morning listeners who contributed to the Indiegogo campaign, I'll use this opportunity to say thank you once again. Jared, what else? What am I missing? Anything?
I think that's about it, dude. I think that's it.
Look, it's January. It's a little bit of a lull. Camps are happening. We got the game at the end of the month. I think Jared's going to go to that game, so we'll have to work out some deal for the
Depends if we're doing a show or not.
Yeah, well, we haven't talked about that South Korea game, and we'll have some more stuff to talk about as MLS camps get ramped up. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. I'll see you on Sunday. Bye.
That's not a thing, idiot. Oh, I stand corrected. Best.
J. Rodius.